Hey, my name is Petra Cruz, and I'm obsessed with all things birth, but especially VBAC. I am a birth doula and mom who had a vaginal birth after 3 cesareans. In this podcast, we dive deep into the inspirational world of vaginal birth after cesarean. In each episode, you'll hear inspiring VBAC stories, practical tips from professionals who've championed the VBAC cause, as well as my personal journey and how it might help you on yours. From mindset shifts to evidence-based practices, you'll leave each episode feeling inspired and informed. Get ready to soak in the wisdom, embrace the strength within, and join this incredible VBAC community. This is the VBAC Junkie Podcast. So today's episode is going to go over how to choose a VBAC over a repeat cesarean. Now, this can be a really hard decision to make. I know at first for me, if you know anything about me, I've had 3 cesareans and then I had a vaginal birth after that. So VBAC is very near and dear to my heart. I'm obsessed with VBAC. And anytime I have a VBAC client or I hear anybody say the word VBAC, I'm like, what? What'd you say? I want to hear. I feel like it is valuable to share what could help you in making this decision because it's not an easy one, especially if you are faced with a lot of negativity and non-supportive people. So what even is VBAC? So VBAC, is vaginal birth after cesarean. And there's also another term that's thrown around. You might also hear it's called TOLAC. So this is a trial of labor after cesarean. And sometimes providers, practitioners, they use this word interchangeably. I personally don't like the term TOLAC because it's like, oh, we'll wait and see. So I don't like it. So I don't use it. I did use it in the beginning when I was first planning because that's what I seen in all the blogs and whatever. So, but I'm not a fan. Vaginal birth is actually after cesarean is actually a very reasonable choice to make because, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but 80 to 90% of women who have had their primary cesarean are actually good candidates for a VBAC. 80 to 90%. Yet, only 10 to 13% of those women are choosing to plan for a VBAC. Only 10 to 13%. Now, there could be a whole host of reasons for that, their previous history, their fear, their doctors, whatever the reason may be. But it's only 10 to 13% of women who are actually planning a VBAC. And of those 10 to 13% of women, 60 to 80% of those women are successful in achieving their VBAC. And if you look at the home birth statistics, it's actually higher. It's actually closer to 90% that are successful. So I could go into a whole episode on why I feel like that number is not higher. We'll save that for another time. So, I feel like shouldn't that be very comforting that 80 to 90% of women are actually good candidates? So, some of the benefits that I want to talk about of VBAC, you know, there's so many. But just to touch on a few, you are having a typically shorter recovery time. You are able to walk around and care for other children. Obviously you have other children. Sometimes your breastfeeding journey can be easier because you're just not pumped up full of all these drugs and obviously stressed out and recovering from a surgery. And, it's just not another cut into your body, not another scar on your body, which is very nice because if you didn't know, there's things that can happen to that scar. You can have adhesions. Sometimes people's bladder adhere to their uterus from scar tissue from having that cesarean, which can actually create mobility issues. And I feel like I had that from my scars because I have 3 scars and I'm not sure what the internal scarring looks like, but I actually personally do scar massage on myself. For now, I am going to look into different types of scar therapy because I do feel my scars still. Like I feel tugging and pulling and tingling sometimes. So scar mobilization and stuff like that is very important if you're planning a VBAC, if you're not yet pregnant. Obviously, check with somebody who is a professional in this area. I'm not a medical provider, so I'm not giving you medical advice. So anyways, that could actually help. It could actually help like your posture. Other benefits of a VBAC, there's lower rates of infection, there's less blood loss, and respiratory issues for babies born via VBAC compared to repeat cesarean are better. Like they don't have as many respiratory issues as repeat cesarean babies. So, healing faster, less risk of infection, blood loss, respiratory issues for your baby. There's so many different benefits. And, like your mental benefits, it can just feel so empowering to, know that your body, if you felt like your body was broken before, now you've given birth to your baby. You did that. Because I'm speaking from myself. I personally felt like I was broken. I was like, what is wrong with me? I cannot give birth to my baby. My body was literally made to birth a baby and I can't do it. So for me, I felt so triumphant. I felt so capable. And what is the benefit is like I educated myself. And it wasn't even like about the vaginal birth. It was about the journey that it took to get to that vaginal birth. I educated myself. I talked to my husband openly, and we discussed things that we never discussed before. I was holding on to things that I didn't even realize. So that brings me to something else. So those are the benefits of a VBAC. At some risks, of course, there's going to be risks. There's risks to everything. There's risks to VBAC. There's risks to cesarean. So some of the risks is, the one that you hear all the time, which is uterine rupture. So I want you to know that the percentage of people who their uterus ruptures is about 0.2 to under 2%. I mean, did you hear that number? It's under 2%. That is the rupture rate. And so obviously, that's not ideal for anybody who is in this under 2%, but I just want you to know that the risk is not that high. I know I was told before that my rupture rate was 50%. I was 50% likely to rupture. So just understanding those numbers, because yeah, it is a possibility. That is a risk. Okay. Some other risk is that your birth doesn't happen the way you envisioned. So that can create more trauma. So there's a lot of things that you can do though beforehand so that you can be okay with, whatever happens. So I want to talk about cesarean. I want to talk about both sides because I am very biased. I'm not going to lie. I think that VBAC is great, but obviously it was great for me. That doesn't mean it's great for everybody. Okay. And I am definitely not here to judge you if you decide you want to repeat cesarean. That's totally fine. So, some of the benefits of a repeat cesarean obviously is you can schedule it. You don't have to wait and wonder when labor is going to come on because you just have this date set. You can prepare for that cesarean ahead of time. You can have all of your people prepared to take care of your other children while you're going through this and healing and all of that stuff. So those are also some of the benefits. Obviously, there's more than that. If you are like a type A personality and you like schedule, you like planning, and you are feeling so much anxiety about waiting for labor, then this might be a better option for you. Like I said, I'm not here to judge. If that feels like a valid option for you, then go for it, okay? But just also know, there are risks. Like I said, there's risks to everything. So, some risks, there could be more blood loss. There could be complications from like the epidural or the spinal Sometimes you do get back issues from the spinal placement. You can get headaches afterwards, feel nauseous, vomiting. There's so many different things that can physically happen during that process. And also, obviously, you are going through a major abdominal surgery. So the healing process is longer. Externally, it may look like you're healed a couple weeks after, a couple months after, but actually internally, it can take up to a year to heal. Because there was 7 layers of your body that are cut open, including muscle. So you have to take that into account. And, there's higher risk of infection. Breastfeeding could be more challenging since you do have different drugs on board. Baby could be more sleepy when they're born and have some little respiratory issues. It depends on your unique situation. I don't want to speak for everybody, but these are just some of like the blanket risk. So I'll just leave it at that. I really want you to, I don't want to give you everything because I think it's really important for you to do your own research and dive as deep as you feel comfortable looking into the VBAC risks and benefits, and then looking at repeat cesarean risks and benefits. So, some things that I really think are important to do if you are planning a VBAC. Definitely consider your medical history, and that includes your previous cesarean. So check out what type of scar you have, because some people have what are called special scars. This would be something other than a low transverse scar. So the low transverse scar, that would be that bikini line scar. So if you have like a straight up and down scar down your middle of your abdomen, that would be considered like a special scar. Obviously, you can get your hospital records and you can get that information yourself so that you know. And that's one thing that a doctor might tell you it might not be possible to have a VBAC if you have a special scar. That I feel like, yes, the risk is higher. I've heard the risk is about 4% for uterine rupture. So it is a couple percentages higher than, if it wasn't a special scar. But I think it's totally your choice because I've actually interviewed a woman who had a free birth after 2 cesareans, and her second cesarean was a special scar. And she did have a successful home birth, well, free birth at home. And if you don't know what a free birth is, that is when there's no medical providers around. So for her specific situation, it was just her husband and her doula, and her doula's like somebody that was coming around with her doula, someone taking pictures. So no medical providers in the house. It was just them. So it is possible, but obviously I'm not here to tell you to do that. I'm just letting you know there are other options out there for you, and it is possible to have a VBAC with a special scar. So definitely look at your medical history. So like diabetes, if you have chronic conditions like that, then definitely think about that. That is a personal decision, but I'm just letting you know certain things to consider because you might want to change your diet or, do something a little bit different to help your case, so to speak. I mean, you really don't have to have a case to give somebody in order to have a VBAC. If you want a VBAC, go for it. Like it's your choice. Like it's your body, it's your baby, so it's your decision. But I do feel like it's good to look at your history, your medical history, so that you can see what you're up against and see what could be possible, what could be kind of like a roadblock in your way, and just like be prepared for that. And another thing that I feel is very important is your emotional and mental readiness. This is huge, okay? Because if you are holding on to any fears or any trauma, that is gonna that is gonna show up in your labor and in your birth. And it could actually stop your labor because you are subconsciously bringing those fears or those traumas into that space. And your body is going to take that as this is not a safe place to give birth. We cannot let this baby be born right now. So Really think about that beforehand. Do some fear clearing. There are YouTube videos that show you how to do fear clearing for birth, some even that are specific to VBAC. So look that up. There are some amazing things that you can do. I also have an episode where I talk about fear clearing. So go ahead and search that. It's fear clearing for your birth. Trauma. If you have experienced any physical, sexual, or even birth trauma, I really feel like it's really important to address that trauma. Talking to your partner, as well as talking to like literally a birth trauma specific licensed therapist, because, it is nice to have a therapist, like just like a general therapist, but birth trauma is different. It is very different. So if you have any kind of trauma like that, talk to somebody. It really might help and it could release something that you didn't know you were holding on to. Me, oh my gosh, I had 18 years of trauma that I was holding on to in my body, in my mind, that I didn't realize I was holding on to. And I had to release that during my pregnancy because I knew that if I was holding on to fear and trauma, it would show up in my labor in the worst ways. So making sure that you are addressing those because I know you don't want to face it. I know that. I've been there. It's scary. Sometimes we don't want to feel those deep, possibly hurtful feelings, but it's so important. So definitely look into that. Some other things. Make sure that you can find yourself a provider that is supportive, a practitioner that is supportive. Because, going through and I did this, and going through every single prenatal appointment and everybody telling you, no, 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 you're going to die, your baby's going to die, it can feel so defeating. Like, I left so many of those appointments crying, wondering if I was doing the right thing for myself and my baby. It was so hard to sit with that. But that was my choice. I kept on going and I knew what they were going to say. I knew what they were going to do. Um, but if you could find, nobody in my area was supportive. So that was like the best I could get. Because I still wanted prenatal care. But if you could find a supportive provider, that could help immensely. So you can reach out to your local ICANN chapter leader, and that's International Cesarean Awareness Network. There are chapter leaders for different areas of the country, different cities. So just go to their website at, I think it's ican.org. I'll leave the link in the show notes. They literally have a list of chapter leaders for your area, and you can literally email them, reach out to them, and a lot of times they have resources and VBAC specific providers that they can give you. Now, when you're looking for a VBAC provider, there are some things to look out for because they might say that they're supportive of VBAC, but then they'll say things like, but you have to give birth by 39 weeks, and we don't do inductions. And, your baby's looking kind of big, so maybe we should just do a repeat cesarean. So if they're saying things like that, they're already instilling fear into your mind, and that's terrible going into labor because then you have these things swirling in your mind. So whenever they are telling you these things, ask them why. Ask them why. That is the question that I always pose. But why? But why? And then that introduces a space for more dialogue. So you can see where they're coming from. And sometimes you just might not find a supportive provider, and that's okay. Not every provider is okay with VBAC. A lot of people either have fear of VBAC because of previous clients, like say a previous client ruptured or something like that. They might have those fears. So they're instilling their own fears into your birth, which obviously your birth is totally different, but that's just what happens. Also, some of them, they get like, there's policies and procedures in the hospital that they have to follow. And, it may not align even with their own views on VBAC, but they have to follow those hospital policies. So make sure that you're asking your doctor questions like, when I go to the hospital, Am I going to have to be continuously monitored? Are they going to require that I have an internal monitor? Are they going to require me to stay in the bed? Do they want me to get an epidural catheter put in, even though I don't want an epidural? Just ask those questions. That way, you know the answer beforehand. You can tell them, I want to know because I don't want any of that. And I want to make sure that that is known beforehand. So make sure that you're speaking up for yourself because if you don't speak up for yourself for what you want, nobody else will. Nobody is going to honor your wishes like you will. Seriously. And I learned that the hard way. I had three C-sections, which I do feel like were unnecessary. And I was a huge people pleaser. I didn't want them to be mad at me. I wanted to be a good patient. I wanted them to be like, good job, you did what we said. I was like, oh man, so ridiculous. And a lot of us are unfortunately conditioned that way. So I am a recovering people pleaser. I am not willing to sacrifice what I want for myself or my baby if that's what I feel in my heart and my soul. So if that's something that is really weighing heavy on your heart, you might want to listen to that. I'm not here to tell you what to do though, because then I'd just be like the doctor, and I don't want to be that way. I want to give you this information or these tips or whatever in hopes that it might help open up your mind to different possibilities because there are endless possibilities out there. You can literally go into that hospital and tell them, no, I don't want continuous monitoring. I want intermittent monitoring. No, I don't want the IV with fluids, but I'll take the IV port, but make sure it's closed. I don't want anything running into me. You can literally do whatever you want. It's your birth, it's your baby. I just want to make sure that I emphasize that because just because they have to follow policies, it doesn't mean you have to. You can sign a paper called Against Medical Advice if that's something that feels good to you. I'm not telling you just to decline anything and everything just to decline it. Like if you have done your research and you find that in your research or in your heart that that doesn't feel right, then you're open to make that decision. It's nobody's decision but you. Also, another thing that I think is important is talking to your partner. This is huge because you've created this baby together. So why wouldn't you talk about that? I didn't realize that until my fourth baby. How crazy is that? Like my husband and I, we talked about like how I wanted him to support me and what I wanted. And at first he was like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe we should talk to the doctor." But after a while he understood like, "You're right. This is your choice. Like, let's do this. You want to do this? Let's do this." And so, having that supportive person in your corner that's going to be there for you no matter what, that makes a difference too because I know my husband was ready. He was ready to advocate for me. Once we stepped in that hospital, he was ready to be like, nope, she's doing what she wants. And he totally would. So having that person that you can trust is crucial. Also, if it feels good to you, hire a doula. Doulas can help advocate for you. Definitely talk to them ahead of time to see if that is something that they do. Not all doulas do that. So definitely talk to them. That can also help with your emotional and physical support. So like your husband and your doula can take turns and someone can rest and someone can help you. So there's always somebody rested and willing to help you emotionally or physically. Um, and choosing your birth location, that can make a big difference. Whether it is a birth center, a home birth, or hospital birth, because the environment can definitely play a part in this. Because if you are not feeling safe, that makes a difference. If you are not feeling comfortable to be your most primal self, that makes a difference. So definitely consider that. Something I didn't talk about before, but I think is important to let you know about, and it's something called the VBAC calculator. So if you hear this term, some doctors use this, some don't, but they will use this calculator that it it's supposed to estimate the likelihood of your VBAC success, which I think is ridiculous. So they put in like your height, your weight, your age, whether you've had a vaginal birth before. There's other factors that they include too, but it's ridiculous. My doctor, one of my doctors did the VBAC calculation on me, and they were like, "Oh, you only have like a 30% chance of having a successful VBAC." I don't think it's a good idea. And if I would have listened to that, oh my gosh, I would not be here. So please, I mean, take that VBAC calculator with a grain of salt. Okay, so moving on to like taking that radical responsibility. I know we've talked about this before, like radical responsibility for your birth and your decisions. This is so important, okay? Because ultimately, this is your decision. This is so important for you to be actively involved in decision making, in researching, and advocating for your preferences. Because ultimately, this is your decision that you're making, and you have to take full ownership of that, no matter what the outcome is. So even if it becomes a repeat cesarean and you didn't plan on that, you were planning for a VBAC, you know, you have to sit with yourself and be okay with that. It was definitely hard for me when I was planning my VBAC to even think about having a cesarean. But I did. I sat with that and I said, if I do have a cesarean again, will I be okay? Will that be okay with me? And of course, I did not want that. But I was like, if it's literally the best decision for myself or my baby, then yes, I am okay with that. I'm not going to put myself or my baby in danger because of my wanting a VBAC so bad. And, I never even thought about my VBAC as being redemptive. I just really did not want another surgery. But after I had my VBAC, it was like so redemptive and so empowering. I felt like I was on top of the world. I still feel like I'm on top of the world. And that obviously changed me forever. But, if you're going into this and your only reason for going into this is to have that redemptive birth, that's your only goal, I invite you to really sit with that and ask yourself why. Because I feel like you have to be okay with either going into this. Because if you put too much emphasis on it being this perfect, redemptive birth and it doesn't go that way, you might leave more traumatized than you went in. So, really think about that. Now, I really want you to think about also creating like a birth preference plan. Of course, this is so important. And it might not be for the reasons you might think. Now, this preference plan is not so that you follow it to a T. This helps you dig deeper into information that you might not have before. This helps you learn things that you might not have known about before. Okay, and this might invite questions to pose to your partner that you might not have thought about before. There's so many things that a birth plan can benefit. It's not about sticking to a specific plan. It's just so you have that information and you feel like you can make a well-informed decision or even just like a gut decision that feels good to you. That's the point of that. So I don't know. I kind of went off on a little tangent everywhere, but I really hope that this is helpful for you in choosing a VBAC or a repeat cesarean because it can feel like a lot of work, but also I don't want you to try all the things. I don't want you to just eat the dates, do the chiropractic. Like, yes, those are incredible, but that's just scratching the surface. That is surface level stuff. Dig deep inside of yourself. Process your previous birth experiences or experience. Do some fear clearing. Have open and honest conversations with your partner and your healthcare providers if you go the healthcare provider route. I really want you to think deeply and connect with not only your inner self, but your baby. All right. Well, I will let you go for now, but thank you so much for being here and listening. And if you have any questions or are not sure where to start to decide on VBAC, or you're ready for VBAC and you kind of want like a roadmap to follow, I actually have this VBAC roadmap guide that I created. And this gives you 5 crucial steps, which a couple of them I talked about, but we go more in depth in this guide. So if you want to get your hands on that, it's free. You can just download it. You can go to my website at birthingcometrue.com/feedback guide. I will also have the link in the show notes. So feel free to download that and it will literally give you the steps to take towards your VBAC. I absolutely can't wait for you to hear next week's episode. It is my good friend, Sarah. I was actually her doula. She was having a home birth after 2 cesareans. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the VBAC Junkie podcast. Make sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show so that you don't miss an episode. And also, I have a free gift for you. If you would like to have a guide on how to prepare for a VBAC, head to my website at www.birthingcometrue.com/VBAC guide. And all of this will be in the show notes, so you can just click that link and head there and download this free guide. I hope you have an amazing week. Until next time, bye.